Welcome back, fellow coders, to another tutorial for the weather app. Now, before we get started, I wanted to give a quick announcement. I've been away for a few weeks due to a family emergency, so that's the reason why I haven't been able to put any videos for the last few weeks. We're going to talk about what it does in a brief overview. We'll talk about sessions and tasks and what types do we have, then authentication and app transfer security, and then I'll show you the example. It is the same example we used on our app previously. So what is a URL session? A URL session is an object that coordinates a group of related network data transfer tasks. The URL class and the related classes provide an API for downloading content. This API provides a rich set of delegate methods for supporting authentication and gives your app the ability to perform background downloads when your app is not running, or in iOS while your app is suspended. We have 4 types of URL sessions: share, default, ephemeral, and background. And we'll talk about those later. We also have several URL schemes supported. We have data, file, FTP, HTTP, and HTTPS. It is worth noting that you can also add support for your own custom networking protocols and URL schemes using URL protocol class. What are sessions? Each session contains a series of data transfer tasks. Tasks interact with the data in some form or another. And we have 3 different types. We have data, upload, and download. Now, the way this works is that your app can create 1 or more sessions depending on the workload. And each session coordinates a group of related data transfer tasks. Within each section, your app adds a series of tasks, each of which represent a request for a specific URL. So you could be pulling data from different sites with different APIs if you choose to in your app. Like most networking APIs, the URL session API is highly asynchronous. It returns data to your app in one of 2 ways, depending on the methods that you call. But you can return data to a completion handler block that is called when a transfer finishes successfully or with an error, or by calling the methods on the sessions delegate as data is received and when the transfer is complete. In addition to delivering this information to delegates, the URL session API provides status and progress properties that you can query if you need to make programmatic decisions based on the current state of the task. And as you might already know, URL sessions also support canceling, restarting, or resuming and suspending tasks, and provide the ability to resume suspended, cancel, or failed downloads where they left off. Okay, so we've talked about URL session overview. Now we're going to talk about sessions and the different types. A share session, which by the way is a singleton, is usually for basic requests. You can't customize it, but it's good if you have very limited requirements. You access the session by calling the share class method. Now, here are some of the disadvantages of using a share session. You can't obtain data incrementally as it arrives from the server. You can't customize the default connection behavior. Your ability to perform authentication is very limited. And you cannot perform background downloads or uploads while your app is not running. And also, this is the only session that you don't create. You're just making a request by calling the share session method. Now let's talk about default session. They behave very much like share sessions unless they are further customized. You can obtain data incrementally using a delegate. Unlike the share session, you can create a default session configuration by calling the default method on the URL session configuration class. Now let us discuss ephemeral sessions. Ephemeral sessions are very similar to default sessions, but do not write to caches, cookies, or credentials to disk. You can create an ephemeral session configuration by calling ephemeral method on the URL session configuration class. Now let's talk about the background session. Background session lets you perform operations in the background while your app is not running. You can create a background session configuration by calling the background session configuration method on the URL session configuration class. Okay, so we've talked about URL session as a whole. We'll talk about sessions, and now we're going to discuss the different types of tasks that you can create. So the first one is data task. With data tasks, you can send and receive data using the NSData objects. Data tasks are intended for short, often interactive requests to a server. Upload tasks, as the name implies, are for sending data, often in the form of a file, and support background uploads while the app is not running as well. Download tasks retrieve data in the form of a file, and support background downloads and uploads while the app is not running. Authentication and TLS. In this slide, we are looking at session-wide challenges and task-specific challenges. When a server requests authentication or provides credentials during a TLS negotiation, the URL session calls methods on its delegate, allowing you to handle the authentication or certificate validation in a custom manner. The method it calls depends on whether you are handling a task-specific challenge or a session-wide challenge, and we'll take a look at those in the next few slides. For task-specific challenges, the session calls delegates URLSession method, but it provides a task on the parameters. For session-wide authentication challenges, the session call is delegates URLSession did receive completion handler if the method exists. Otherwise, it calls the delegates URLSession task did receive completion handler method. If you do not implement these methods when a request requires a client authentication, the URLSession attempts to authenticate as follows. By using the authentication information provided as a part of the request URL, if available, or by looking up internet passwords and certificates in the user's keychain in macOS or the app's keychain in iOS. If credentials are not available, or if the server rejects the credentials, the connection continues without authenticating. For HTTP and HTTPS requests, the connection attempts fails with an appropriate HTTP status code and may provide alternative content such as a public version of a private site. For URL types such as FTP, the connection fails with a connection failure. Now, something that started in iOS 9.0 and OS X 10.11 is called the ATS, App Transport Security, and those can be modified in the info plist. If you remember, we configured this on the setup video to allow an HTTP connection. The main objective of this feature is to improve privacy and data integrity, and to prevent accidental data leaks to malicious parties. Now, if you remember, in our weather app, we are using a share session, which is just what we need for our basic request. And as mentioned before, the share session is a singleton. Now here at the beginning, we are calling the URLSession object that we call the share method, and we are creating a data task all at the same time. After that, we are simply doing some checks in case of any errors. If we have any data, we'll print that to the console in the form of bytes. And then here we have a do and catch. And inside the do, we do the JSON serialization of our data and print some data to the console for testing. In the catch, we print any errors. And at the bottom, the task is resumed since all tasks are suspended upon creation. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and it gives you a basic understanding of URLSession. I'm going to put in the description a few links for you to further your training in these classes and the related classes. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Also remember to give me some feedback on how the videos are coming along. Thank you for watching, and remember to code with a purpose. See you on the next video.